Hello everybody, what we're going to be looking at in today's video is we are going to have a walkthrough of a Level 2 Functional Skills English writing exam. As part of this, we're going to have a look at the kinds of questions that are going to be asked, the amount of time you should spend on each question, and hints and tips for getting the highest possible marks. So, as you can see on the screen behind me, this is one of the past papers from our exam board, NCFE. And we're just going to have a quick look, first of all, at the information that we're given right at the beginning of the exam. So as you can see, it gives you an idea of the two subjects that are going to be covered in the scenarios that we're going to write about. The first one being environmental awareness, and the second one being starting a new job or course. As always, it tells us to read the information that is provided and complete the two activities, the first being a letter, the second being an article. And we can see that they are both worth the same amount of marks. We should spend the same amount of time and put the same amount of effort into each one. We scroll a little further, as you can see, it recommends we spend 25 minutes on the first activity, 25 on the second, and then 10 minutes that we hopefully can split between planning to start with, and then checking, editing, and proofreading once we've completed the two questions. So, on to the first question. It says that we are going to be writing a letter. We've got 22 marks, and then it starts with our scenario. So it gives us a subject that we will write about. This says, an environmental expert recently gave a talk at your place of learning. The expert talked about some practical things that we can do to help the environment. The last slide said, what can you do? Reduce, reuse and recycle waste. Volunteer, pick up litter, plant trees. Change the way you travel. You've been asked to write a letter of thanks to the expert. So again, I'm thinking about the key words and phrases there. In your letter, you should explain what we've learned from the talk, say why these environmental issues are important to us, and what we may do as a result of the talk. And then we are given an actual physical address to use in writing our letter. So, the first things that I'm thinking of are the fact that we are writing a letter. So the first thing that we write on a letter, we are the most important person when we're writing a letter. Our details come first. So the first thing I'm going to write is my address for them to respond to. And as I've mentioned before, you do not have to put your real details in. You can entirely make it up. Obviously, because this is a college course, I always use 1 College Street as my example. And we just write our address in the top right hand corner. Then, what comes next on a letter? Then we need their address, which thankfully we can copy and paste into the appropriate place on the text box at the bottom. Now, unfortunately, the formatting does need a little bit of playing around with, just to ensure it looks like everything is in the right place, but it means we don't have to write everything out ourselves. We can just copy and paste. Now, as a letter, to make sure it is relevant, we need to ensure that we are putting in our date. And then we look, have we been given the name of the person we are writing to? Yes, we have. So again, we're going to copy that and we start our letter with an appropriate introduction. So our appropriate greeting, because we know their name, we can just say, Dear Dr. Martain. That's fine. Okay, now we've been asked to cover 3 specific bullet points. So again, as part of my planning, I'm going to copy those and just put them in because they are going to be what the 3 main paragraphs are going to be about. So again, we may need to change the formatting a little bit. And to ensure that we make the word count, I always split it into 5 little sections. We start with an introduction. We write a small paragraph on the first, second and third subjects, and then our conclusion at the end. And then because we know who we are writing to, we know their name, I'm going to write yours sincerely, leave a couple of lines and write my name. There we go. So that's the planning. That's roughly how long it should take. We've ensured that we've got all of those layout features sorted before we've even started writing any content. And Because we've copied and pasted some of the information over, it means that we don't have to keep looking between the piece that we're writing on and the question that's above it. We've got that in there. So we can adjust that and we can change it so that we are basically answering everything that they're asking us to look at. Now, our introduction, this is basically where we state what the purpose of us writing is. In this case, it says, you are writing a letter of thanks. So look at the wording of the question, because you can always potentially use these words in order to, like if you rearrange the wording of the question, you can use that in your introduction. So for example, if it says you are writing a letter of complaint, then you start your introduction by saying, I am writing to complain. In this case, we've been asked to write a letter of thanks, so we use those words. So something along the lines of, I am writing to give my thanks for, and again, it says in the question, the talk you gave at. Now it says my place of learning. If this was in reality, we would know that place. And as such, I'm going to just use the name of our wonderful company, SCL Education. So I'm writing to give my thanks for the talk you gave at SCL Education on, now what was the talk on? It was on environmental issues, but let's be a bit more specific. An environmental expert recently gave a talk at your place of learning. They talked about some practical things we can do to help the environment. So again, we can use that wording and just change it around a bit, as long as we make sure that the grammar and everything flows and that we do change words like you to I when needed, things like that, then it works perfectly fine. I am writing to give my thanks for the talk you gave at SCL Education on what we could do to help the environment. So for an introduction, it's very short and it is very much to the point, but that could be all we need. What we're doing is we're looking at basically how are we going to start this, and we get our ideas written down. Then we move on to the next section. We get our ideas out of our head and onto the screen, and then we make our way through it. We can always add more to various sections afterwards. So we're explaining what we have learned from the talk. So I feel that the talk was very beneficial as you taught us lots of good ideas, hints and tips. For those of you looking out for language features, that's the use of a triplet or the power of 3. Ideas, hints and tips. I feel the talk was very beneficial as he taught us lots of good ideas, hints and tips about how to help the environment. Don't worry too much about any spelling errors you make in the first draft. Remember, we do have that magical 10 minutes at the end where we can go through and correct any mistakes. And we do that slowly and methodically, because if we find a mistake, great, we can fix it. If the examiner finds a mistake, obviously that could affect your mark. So it says what we have learned from the talk. Now, again, I'm just going to refer back to this. It talks about reduce, reuse and recycling waste. I'm going to focus on the word reuse. So I'm going to mention the fact that I found it really interesting that there are so many household products that can be reused or recycled to extend their lives. And then I'm going to think of a real life example. Again, I say real life, it doesn't have to be your 100%, honest, true to God, this is what happened in my life. But you can imagine that certain situations or scenarios could happen. That's what we're going to use. So I found it really interesting that there are so many household products that can be reused or recycled to extend their lives. I have started to use aluminium foil that has been used on food to make a bird scarer for my new vegetable patch. They don't necessarily like shiny things, so you get a stick, a little bit of foil on the end. I have also decided to make my own candle holders out of used glass jars, as they look really pretty and make gifts for friends and family. There we go. Now, if we have a look at the word count, we're on 179. Now, all of the level 2 writing pieces, you're hoping for a minimum of 250. Usually they put the sort of barriers 250 as the minimum, 350 for the maximum. So if you are able to do somewhere in that region, you're onto a good start. So the second point they want us to talk about, as I said, we're just getting our first ideas out, then we move on to the next one. So why are these environmental issues important to me? Okay, so the environment is changing daily, and it worries me that there are so many items going into landfill and poisoning the ground and, I don't know, water supplies that could be used again. Okay, so we've got a bit of a personal comment on there. It worries me that so many items are going into landfill and poisoning the ground and water supplies that could be used again. And there, I spotted a spelling mistake already. Let's have a look at that one. Okay. Okay, so the next line wants us to say, what are we going to do as a result of the talk? And again, if I have any further answers to this, if I've got any further comments I want to do, I can add them in at the end. So, what may we do as a result of the talk? As a result of the information and guidance you gave in your talk, I am going to set up a local litter picking group on my community, and remember it's the name of a website, so on my community Facebook page, in order to try and bring back some beauty to the area in which I live. Okay, so we're on 226 words. So I think by the time we've done a very short conclusion, we should have made the minimum word count. So our conclusion. So what do we want from the person that we're writing to? What do we want them to do? I would like it very much if you would consider coming to talk at my local community centre in order to try and recruit more people to help with litter and other environmental issues in the local area. And look at that, we have hit that 250 words. So at this point, if it was a real exam, I would stop. I would move on to the second question and do the same thing. Make sure that I'm thinking about my layout. Have I covered the 3 main points in the question they want me to look at? Start writing, and when I've completed that second one, I come back to the first. And that's when I'm coming back to it with ever so slightly fresher eyes, so I should find it easier to spot any spelling, grammar, or punctuation mistakes. I will also check and ensure that the tone and the language, the level of formality is correct. I'll make sure that all of the format and layout features are in the right place. And I'll think also with the language choices, is there anything I can do to really boost my mark? Have I got any words in there that I'm particularly unsure of the spelling about? Because if so, I would then take that time to think about what words I could use instead in order to guarantee that I'm not making a spelling mistake. So that's the first question. Come back to the second part of this for the second question. We will be uploading this video soon. I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.